Coming up on 5 Minute News. Appeals court allows Biden's vaccine mandate to go into effect. Minnesota police officer who shot Daunte Wright says sorry. And ex-hostages in Haiti doing well, mission agency says. It's Saturday, December 18. I'm Anthony Davis. A federal appeals court panel on Friday allowed President Joe Biden's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for larger private employers to move ahead. The 2-1 decision by a panel of the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reverses a decision by a federal judge in a separate court that had paused the mandate nationwide. The rule from the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration was to take effect from the 4th of January. With Friday's ruling, it's not clear when the requirement will be put in place. Republican-led states joined with conservative groups, business associations, and some individual businesses to push back against the requirement as soon as OSHA published the rules in early November. They argued that OSHA was not authorized to make the emergency rule. The case was consolidated before the Cincinnati-based 6th Circuit, which is dominated by Republican-appointed judges. Of the two ruling in favor of the OSHA mandate, one was appointed by a Democratic president and the other by a Republican. The dissenting judge was appointed by former President Donald Trump. Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge said she would ask the U.S. Supreme Court to block the order. The vaccine requirement would only apply to companies with 100 or more employees and would cover about 84 million workers. U.S. officials intensified calls yesterday for unvaccinated Americans to get inoculated in the face of the new Omicron variant that has contributed to a record number of infections in New York. The risk of reinfection with the Omicron coronavirus variant is more than 5 times higher, and it has shown no sign of being milder than Delta, a new study showed, as cases soar across Europe and threaten year-end festivities. Kimberly Potter, the white former Minnesota police officer on trial for shooting black motorist Daunte Wright, broke down in tears on Friday as she testified to being deeply sorry for mistaking her handgun for her taser during a traffic stop. 49-year-old Potter has pleaded not guilty to first and second-degree manslaughter charges, which carry maximum sentences of 15 and 10 years respectively. Potter has said she thought she was drawing her taser when she shot Wright in the chest with her Glock 9mm handgun on April 11. Potter was a police officer in the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center for 26 years prior to the shooting, which triggered several nights of protests, with critics calling it another example of police violence against black Americans. The incident occurred just a few miles north of where Derek Chauvin, a white former Minneapolis police officer, was at the same time standing trial for executing George Floyd, a black man whose 2020 death during an arrest set off racial justice protests in many U.S. cities. Chauvin was convicted of murder. Potter and another police officer she was training pulled Wright over because there was an air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror and his vehicle's license tabs were expired. They then learned of a warrant for his arrest on a misdemeanor weapons charge and sought to detain him, which Wright resisted. Potter can be heard shouting, "Taser, taser, taser," on her body-worn camera before firing into Wright's vehicle after he broke free from a second officer and tried to drive away. Under questioning from her lawyer, Potter said it was the officer she was training who made the decision to pull Wright over, and that she likely would not have made the same call given that drivers were generally having difficulty renewing their registrations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Prosecutors have argued that Potter was a veteran and well-trained officer, including taser-specific courses in the months before the incident, making her criminally culpable for the shooting. They called 25 witnesses, compared with 8 for the defense, with many testifying about training and procedures. All the former hostages from a US-based missionary group kidnapped in Haiti have been flown out of the country after a 2-month ordeal, the leader of their Ohio-based missions organization said yesterday, as he also extended an offer of forgiveness to their captors. David Troyer, General Director of Christian Aid Ministries, said in a video statement that a US-flagged plane left the Caribbean nation Thursday afternoon, carrying the last 12 kidnapped missionaries, hours after they were freed earlier in the day. Everyone, including the 10-month-old baby, the 3-year-old boy and the 6-year-old boy, seemed to be doing reasonably well, Troyer said. The last releases came 2 months to the day after the group of 16 Americans and 1 Canadian, including 5 children, were kidnapped by the 400 Mawozo gang, which initially demanded millions of dollars in ransom. The other 5 had been freed earlier. Troyer did not comment on the circumstances of the release, such as whether ransom was paid or a rescue effort was involved, but expressed thanks to the US government and all others who assisted in the safe return of our hostages. Troyer said the hostages had prayed for their captors and told them about God's love and their need to repent. The missionaries were abducted on October 16, shortly after visiting an orphanage in Ganthia, where they verified it had received aid and played with the children, Troyer said. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.